Diva Harja, agus Fuelta Arash of Irish with Rosie. Now this is a video I've been wanting to make for a while. Today we're going to be talking about the Irish question words. So if that's a topic you're interested in, I hope you'll stick around for the whole thing. So, the Irish question words. First, I want to give a really big, huge thank you, shout out to several of the people on the irishlanguageforum.com who helped me with a couple of the questions I had regarding this topic when I was researching some of the material for this several weeks ago. So go ramila me the moigiv. Okay, let's get started. Okay, Irish question words. Today, it's time to learn about the Irish question words. Question words are words that introduce questions. Question words can be pronouns, like in the sentence, what should I do? Or they can be adjectives, like in the sentence, which skirt is best, which is an adjective modifying skirt. Or they can be adverbs, like, where will you go? Where is acting as an adverb modifying the verb go. Now, the basic Irish question words are ke, ka, and cad, which each can have different meanings depending on the context. All Irish question words consist either of one of those question words by itself or of one of those words plus another word. Because of that, I kind of like to think of these three words, ke, ka, and cad, as option 1, option 2, or option 3. Now let's get into the words themselves. So first let's look at who. Who is ke? So for our example sentence, ke aviag sranu, who was snoring. Now before we move on to the pink box below, I will say that some of the structure of these question sentences will heavily involve what's called the copula, which is a special verb type word which means to be in Irish. I won't recover the copula, but I do have a video on it that I'll link below if you haven't seen it yet. Now we can move on to the pink box. In identification questions, that is, when a definite noun follows ke, a pronoun matching the gender or the number of the noun is added between ke and the noun. An H is also prefixed to pronouns following ke. Before we look at the examples, so we said that an identification question is a question in which a definite noun follows ke, who. A definite noun is usually just a noun with the before it, like the dog instead of just dog or a dog, or with a possessive before it, like your pen or my book, or a proper name like Seamus or Sheila. Now let's look at the two examples I have to see what I mean about the pronoun with the H attached to it in these identification questions. So we have ke han farshin, who is that man? That man is a definite noun. So after ke, we added the pronoun a, which means he or the masculine form of it, and it matches the gender of that man. We put an H in front of the a, and it becomes he. In the other sentence, we have ke hiad na farshin, who are those men? In this case, the gender doesn't matter. All that matters is that it's a plural, na farshin, those men. So we'll want to place id, which means they or them, after ke, and add an H to the front. Ke hiad na farshin. Now in these type of questions called identification questions, where there's a pronoun that comes directly after the question word, and there's a definite noun that comes directly after that, ke will become ketiv in the past tense. So, for example, ketiviad na buachari, who were the winners? Now, who are the winners? Or that would be ke hiad na buachari. Now for the next question word we have what. There are 3 different common versions of what in Irish. Each correspond to the 3 main dialects: Ulster, Connacht, and Munster. If y'all didn't know already, I'm trying to learn the Ulster dialect as closely as possible, so I lean toward Ulster pronunciations and Ulster vocabulary choices. So the Ulster version of what is Cajay, which literally means like what it. In Connacht, it's cared. And you might be thinking, hey, you done lied to me. You said there were only 3 Irish question words. Well, I didn't lie. Cared is actually a contraction of K, which was option 1 still, plus the word rud, which means thing. So cared literally means like who thing or thing, what thing. In Munster, they tend to use just cad. So, for our examples, Cajay tatu Yanu, what are you doing? Or, Cair de Vishag Skriu, what was he writing? And last we have, Cada Wakal Ruth and you, what did Ruth bake today? Now, let's look at our note in the pink box. Note, no matter which of the versions of what you typically choose to use, depending on the dialect that you speak, you must use either Cajay, Caji, Cajid, or Cairde, Cairdi, Cairdiad in identification questions. Again, that is when a definite noun follows the question word. Immediately follows the question word. So, what are the results? Cairdiad Natarhi, the results being the definite noun. The next example, Kajida Warul, what is your opinion? Your opinion is a definite noun. The next question word we'll look at is which. So the main version of which that you'll see is Cain, which is a combination of K, which is option 1 again, plus which means the. So like, what the. In Ulster, you might hear instead though, Cajayan. Keep in mind right now, for which, we're talking about the adjective version of which. Like, which book? Or like in our example, Cain duash is fairlat, which prize do you prefer? So, which prize? Which is an adjective modifying prize. Now there's another version of which, the version that is a pronoun, where it doesn't modify something else, it stands alone as the thing you're talking about. So this version of which in Irish is keaku. So it's like you're saying which of them, or literally which at them. For our example sentence, we have keaku's fairlat, which do you prefer, or which of them do you prefer? Again, it's acting like a pronoun because it's not modifying anything or describing anything. It is the thing. Now, in the note in the pink box below, the word ka can also sometimes be used as which. In such cases, it is, next page, ka, as you would expect, or before a vowel, it would be C apostrophe or ka, H, and then the rest of the word. If I remember right, in Ulster, they tend to use the C apostrophe version before words beginning with the vowel. In the past or conditional tenses, however, instead of ka or before the vowel versions, it'll be kad, or before a vowel, karev. So let's look at some examples. Come, why husayanan sheshindu? What good does that do me? Next example, kanyamatart, or kahanyamatart. What is your name? But literally, what or which name is on you. Next example, kar harvadune. What would it profit us or benefit us? Literally, what or which profit or benefit would it be for us? So this is in the conditional tense. What would it conceivably benefit us? So ka then becomes kar, And we're going to lenite the word tarva, which means to put an H after the initial front consonant of it, and it changes from tarva to harva, and we have kar harva duane. What would it benefit us? And last example, karavishavishi. How old or what or which age was she? So we're talking in the past tense. Which age was she? Age, ish, begins with a vowel, so we'll use karav, karavish avishi. For our next question word, we'll look at when. In Ulster, you would hear kahoy or kahud. In Connacht, you'd hear cain uaj. And in Munster, you are more likely to hear cahan, which is a combination of the words ka plus hun. And that literally means like, which when. So I have one example here, kahan navetu arash. When will you be back? Our next question word, how. In Ulster, you're more likely to hear kajamer. In Connacht, you'll hear cain hui. Or a lot of times the N in cane there won't be pronounced, and you'll hear ke hui, like ke hui will to. In Munster, you'll hear conus, which is a combination of ka plus inus. And inus means way or manner. So which way or which manner. Let's look at our examples. Kajamar harlashation. How did that happen? Ke hui rodawamo. How was your grandma? Konasatai Girileshin Chenskadal. How is the project coming along? Now again, let's look at the question word, how. But this time, we'll think of how as in to what degree or extent. Like how far or how tall. You'll either hear kajeho, keho, or ka. And keep in mind, I don't know why this is. There's probably a grammatical reason that makes sense. But from what I understand, the versions with ho in it, you'll need to use agus, which means and, or the contracted form of agus, is, after the adjective that you're wondering the extent of and the verb. You'll see what I mean in the examples. Que ho fada agus avetu sarank. How long will you be in France? So que ho fada, long, agus, and avetu sarank, that you will be in France. The next example, kajeho tapui agus atatu apple to reach. How fast can you run? And our last example, we're going to use ka instead of keho or kajeho, and we'll see in this example if the adjective starts with a consonant, you'll lenite it when possible, that is add an H when possible after the initial consonant, or if it starts with a vowel, you'll prefix an H to it. So let's look. Ka vinica a etliantu, how often do you fly? Or ka hard a etliantu, how high do you fly? We lenited minica to vinica, but added an H before high, ard. Our next question word is where, which will just be ka, such as ka willan warchol.
Where's the beef?
Some hamburger places give you a lot less beef on a lot of bun.
Now let's look at our blue box. Preceding a verb, ka will become kar in the past tense, except for before a few of the irregular verbs. So, for example, karag tu nahachracha. Where did you leave the keys? Where left you the keys? Our next blue box, in copular questions, it's kar, as usual, or before a vowel, karab. And if it's in the past tense or the conditional tense, it'll be kar again, or before vowels or FH. Remember, FH is always silent, so it's like it's a vowel. It'll be karav. Let's look at our examples. Kar fager lesh bia a hjanart. Where can he buy food? Karabasu. Where are you from? Our third example. Kar wailat galanart. Where would you like to go tonight? So that's a conditional tense sentence. Our last example will be an example of a conditional tense, one of these copular where questions with a word coming right after where that starts with FH, or a vowel, but FH in this case. So it'll be Karav. Karaver tosohianu na lenarjahain. Where would be better to start than with our own home? Now next, we have where as in which specific place. Kahach, which means which place. Our example, Kahachamulamujlahira, where will we meet? Which place specifically shall we meet? Now our second to the last main question is why. In Ulster you'll hear Katia. Sometimes it can be pronounced Katiga, but the way I've heard it the most is Katia. In Connacht you'll hear Cain Fa. Cain Fa would be more how they would pronounce it in Ulster. And in Munster they would say Cadnahave. If you're going to say it in an Ulster pronunciation, that would be Cadnahu. But if you're choosing Munster vocabulary, I'm guessing you're probably not going to want to pronounce it in an Ulster way. So Cadnahave. Katia Anyarna Tuashin. Why did you do that? Cain Fa will Shishun Shaw. Why is she here? Cadnahave Narhuashi. Why didn't she go? And our last main question is whose. That would be Kalesh, which literally means who with it. In the past tense, it'll be Carelesh. Kaleshe, whose is it? Carelesh and Madhu, whose dog was it? Now let's look at our blue box. As you may have already noticed, after the question word or words, the rest of the sentence will either be formatted as a direct relative clause or as an indirect relative clause. Don't worry, we'll learn what relative clauses are another time. That actually might be my next video, I'm not sure yet. For now, just know that a direct relative clause takes the independent verb form, and the indirect relative clause takes the dependent verb form. The independent verb associated with direct relative clauses will take lenition when possible, except with ata, and the dependent will take eclipsis when possible, except in the past tense. So just some examples of what I mean by that. Kajaya yanhishi, what will she do? That's a direct relative clause, and the verb janhi is lenited to yanhi. Kajay martatu, how are you? That's also a direct relative clause, but it's that word ata, so it's not lenited. Kehui wiltu, how are you? That's an indirect relative clause, so the verb underwent eclipsis. Remember eclipsis, I will link my videos on eclipsis and lenition down below, by the way, but eclipsis is not like lenition. Lenition is adding an H after the initial consonant, and it combines with the initial consonant to make a different sound. Eclipsis is when you add a consonant in front of the initial consonant, and it eclipses or takes over the sound to make it its own. So, Cain hui wiltu, how are you? BH is pronounced like a W in this case. And our last example, Katia nach ganen tu, why don't you sing? This is also an indirect relative. The C in kanen, sing, is eclipsed with its buddy letter G, and the G takes over the sound and it's ganen. Ignore the C. So, which is which? Which question words in Irish take which kind of clause, direct or indirect? Because you kind of need to know that. So, you just kind of have to memorize these. These question words, the following, take a direct relative clause. What? Kajay, cared, and kad. Who? K. When? Kahin, kahui, kenue. And last, how? Kajamer and kunas. You might notice that Kane Hui is missing, but that's because it randomly takes an indirect relative, and so we'll look at that below. These next following question words take an indirect relative clause. Where, ka and kahach, why, cain fwa, katia, and kadnahu, whose, kavish, and how, but only cain hui. So those are just ones you have to memorize and get used to, and before you know it, you'll have it. Those were the basic question words. Next, we'll look at some common fixed question phrases, such as how much or how many. Kaved dinyaveon. How many people will be there? When kaved is used as many, then sort of like counting objects, the noun that comes after how many will be in the singular. But if you use it as how much, the noun that comes after it will be in the genitive singular, such as how much time do we have? The next example, kaved ama atagun. Is time, ama is the genitive of time. How much of time do we have? Next, how old? Kahish or kanish. Kahishatatu, what age are you or how old are you? Next we have how long / how far, which are the same words in Irish. You can either say ke hofada or ka'ad. Ke hofada agus a bhí mé a mahalu. How long was I asleep for? Or you can use either of these phrases to mean far instead of how long. Ka'ad atawar jahasha. How far is y'all's house from here? Next we have how tall. Keho hard or Cain arja. Cain arja atan shiraf. How tall is the giraffe? Next question, what color? Cain da. Cain da viera quij gruege. What color was her hair? And we have 3 more. What kind? You'll hear cain sort, cain kinyo, or cain size. All means the same thing. Cain sort dinya atan. What kind of person is he? Next, what size? Cain veg or cain tos? Cain vegetawech. What size do you want? And last we have what time? Cain tam. Cain tamatasha. What time is it? Now let's take a quick look at complement clauses. Let's read the blue box. You may remember previously in the last video we talked about complement clauses. Complement clauses are dependent clauses that complete the thought of a sentence. They complete sentences like I know that, I wonder if, I don't care whether. We also talked about how in Irish many of those complement clauses are introduced by special words called particles, which are equivalent to the words that, if, and whether. For example, Hulamagar hit she. I heard that she fell. Or Nilaseki and Nebrahasha. She doesn't know if it will work. Or last, Nilma Kincha a Wilshed chart. I'm not sure whether he's coming. Now the next blue box. Well, just like in English, the Irish question words can also be used to introduce some complement clauses. The sentences that these clauses are a part of are called indirect questions. Indirect questions contain a complement clause that is sort of an embedded question, such as, I don't know who did it. The question, who did it, is embedded in the statement, I don't know who did it. An indirect question states someone's uncertainty about something, like the above example, or it expresses knowledge of the answer to someone else's potential uncertainty, like, I know where it is. I know the answer to where is it, if anyone was wondering. So let's look at some examples of this in Irish. Nilma kincha kajaya yanashe. I'm not sure what he'll do. Ta sagam kearinye. I know who did it, who done it. And last, Nila sagam ka wilshe. I don't know where it is. In English, we also use question words to introduce complement clauses that aren't indirect questions. These clauses simply identify something, such as, that is what I would like, or he's who I saw at the park. But most Irish question words, however, should not be used to introduce these complement clauses that aren't indirect questions. It's better to avoid such constructions when possible by using one of two methods. 1. Using a noun plus a relative clause. For example, Sinné an duine a bhí san oifig. That's who was in the office. Or literally, that's the person that was in the office. So notice we didn't use the question word here and say Sinné cé a bhí san oifig. That would be better avoided. Sinné an duine a bhí san oifig. The person. Next, Sinné an atrar bhailim a bheith. That's where I'd like to be. Literally, that's the place I'd like to be. And our last example is Mailim an rud a cheanama. I like what I bought. Literally, I like the thing I bought. And the second and last construction you can use to avoid those situations of using question words in non-indirect question sentences is using what's called the generalizing relative particle. That's a fancy term. And it's also too long to keep typing, so I have it shortened to the GRP in this pink box. The GRP, or are in the past tense, is a pronoun, and it is an entirely different word from the which is a particle used in relative clauses. The GRP can be understood to mean all that which, or what. The verb is lenited after the past tense, and eclipsed after the other tenses. And it goes without saying whenever I say something's lenited or eclipsed, that's when possible, because only consonants can be lenited or eclipsed, and among the consonants, not all consonants are able to be lenited or eclipsed. So again, I'm going to link my videos on that those two topics down below, and you can watch them. So I have two examples. Sin hug she do. That's what she gave him. Kind of an implied, that's all that she gave him. Shaw will lugum. This is what I have. An implied, this is all that I have. Last, we have exclamations. In English, we often use question words as exclamatory words, like, what fun, how awful,
How rude.
In Irish, these type of exclamations can be formed in different ways, such as by a lehij, kajamer, or nach. For example, a lehij to seal, what a life. Kajamer leh, what a day. Or nahinta, how wonderful. And there you go, easy as pie. Thank you for joining me today and watching this video. If you liked this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel and you would like more Irish content, be sure to subscribe below. Also, follow me on Instagram and Facebook, which I'll link below. And if you would like to keep these notes for further reference, you can download them in picture form on Facebook or on Dropbox, which I will also link below. And as always, I really look forward to seeing y'all here next time. Gajishin, Slan Gafol.